Welcome to the newest edition of Reclaiming My Mind. I'm your host, Jessica Vaughn, also the president of the Democratic Progressive Caucus of Tampa Bay. Today, I'm extremely excited to have one of my favorite candidates this season on, Debra Bellanti, who's running for Florida House District 60. Welcome, Debra.
Hi, and thank you so much. And by the way, I love the title of your podcast. Reclaiming My Mind is the best.
Oh, thank you. Aaron Abel said Reclaiming My Media, and I wish I had done that. But if we ever franchise, I'm going to see if I can tap her for that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I wanted to first start off talking more a little bit about your seat. So you're running in District 60. Mm-hmm. Where does that cover? And tell me a little bit about your district.
Yeah, so District 60 is pretty much all of South Tampa. Mm-hmm. So Kennedy Boulevard all the way south. So that's from West Shore all the way over to Harbor Island and actually into Channelside and downtown Tampa. It runs all along 41 West down to Apollo Beach and Ruskin. So Cockroach Bay Road is the last. So it's basically all around the bay. The joke is I can get to my entire district by boat. That's the joke. It goes up actually even past Kennedy, around the airport, into the town and country area. So Sheldon Road and Racetrack Road. So I go from Racetrack Road to Cockroach Bay Road, about 157,000 people.
Wow.
In that district. It is large and in length, but it's very dense in areas. So some areas there's hardly anybody, and there's some that are really huge and dense. So
was that recently changed, the district, the boundaries of the district?
Yeah. It used to, I had a friend who ran for the seat 15 years ago, and it was completely different.
Okay.
So it was gerrymandered.
I was going to say, so it sounds like it's been gerrymandered.
It has.
So what does the constituency look like? Is it more Republican-based? Is it Democrat? Tell me about the voters.
It's a purple district, meaning that it is probably +7 Republican, but it only went to Trump by 1 percentage point. Even though the county went to Hillary, my district went to Trump by 1 percentage point. They are moderate Republicans. They are maybe fiscally conservative, but they believe in social freedoms, and they believe in helping people. So that's why it's purple. I think that, and that's actually good for me because I need Republicans to win. I need the NPAs. And so that's why I think this year it's winnable, because of the way the district is drawn up. It is predominantly Caucasian. It's 13% Hispanic, which I think people are shocked to hear that. There's 13% in my district that are Hispanic, and 7% African American.
Okay, so when you say +7, I don't know if a lot of listeners know what that means. That's okay.
Yeah.
Does that mean 7 voters or +7 percentage? What does that mean when you say +7?
It's 7 percentage.
Okay.
7% more registered Republicans than Democrats. But I will tell you, just like the county itself, we're seeing a big growth in the NPAs. So we have so many Democrats. It's third, but the NPAs are climbing.
So when you're out there and you're knocking on doors, which I've seen you do a lot, what are some of the issues specific to that area in South Tampa that you're finding a lot of the voters seem to care about?
Education funding is the topic in my district.
Wow.
And that's cross partisan lines. I am hearing from both Republican parents and Democratic parents and independents alike that they are frustrated. They're seeing right now seeing the ramifications of underfunding. They're seeing the ACs and the lead and the mold in their child's school.
Right.
And mind you, this has been happening for a long time across in other schools, but it's made their child's school. So that's kind of pumped that topic up. Education first and foremost. I think followed closely by transportation, because we're smack dab right in the middle of all of it down in South Tampa. And they're concerned about that and what's happening with that. And we're going to talk about the 2 referendums.
Right.
They're both pretty hot. They're both pretty hot in my district. And then I think followed third, healthcare is a close third, right tied with the environment. I think what's happening in South Tampa with red tide and the toxic algae, it's now come up into the bay. And I think that's kind of hit home for some people as well.
So it sounds a lot on par with what many Floridians are concerned about in general. And who are you running against? Tell me about your opponent.
My opponent is Jackie Toledo. She is a Republican. She is a first term. She was her first term this last go around. She actually ran for city council first against Guido Maniscalco and lost by about 150 points. And she did what we like to call she failed up. So she lost that race, but she jumped into the race that Dana Young, this is the seat that Dana Young used to have. She had it for 3 terms. And so she jumped into that race thinking that she'd run unopposed. Mm-hmm. And last year she ran against David Singer for the seat and lost. David Singer lost to Jackie. She's a Republican. I think I like to say she's a Republican because of opportunity. Mm-hmm. Apparently, when she ran as a city council candidate, she was more Democratic. Mm-hmm. In fact, I know she voted for Obama. I have friends who know her. And so she ran as a Republican for opportunity, and then she towed the party line. She has voted 100% with her party, every vote. And the parents are upset about Republican moms are upset how she voted for the gun bill that the Parkland students asked for.
Right.
And she's voted against public schools. She is an engineer by trade. That is her degree. I don't know that she actually has a job in that field. She is a mother of 5 children.
Wow.
They are all in private school. We have a bunch of mutual friends. I've never met her. I just met her. I've never met her before until I started campaigning, which is kind of sad.
Right.
But in a nutshell, she's a very hard worker. I think the reason why she won against, and last time was because she knocked on every door.
Really?
She's a very hard worker, and I will give her that. And I'm all for women candidates running on both sides of the aisle. Mm-hmm. But I think that she's wrong on too many issues, and I need someone in my district to represent us, and I don't think she's doing it.
Yeah, when I looked up her voting record, it was concerning, and then when I kind of Googled her, most of what she was associated with was the NRA and kind of being the poster girl for the NRA and 100% approval rating from them. So it sounds like that's where she gets a lot of her support specifically is from the NRA. So now we've learned a little bit about your opponent, but we still don't know a lot about you as a person, or I don't. So tell me, aside from, this election, about you in general.
Well, I'm a mom of a 4th grader. I have a little girl named Josephine who's 9, going on 19, I like to say. I'm married. I've been married about 12 years to my husband, Anthony, who is incredible. I have an incredible partner. I wouldn't be able to campaign without him.
Sure.
We both are small business owners. Mm-hmm. I own a marketing consultation company here in town. I represent small businesses to large, huge hospitals and Fortune 500 companies. I'm self-employed, which gives me the flexibility to campaign.
Right.
My husband owns a property appraiser business. He moved here for me. I kid that I imported him to Tampa because I lived in Tampa for 26 years, in my district for 26 years. I'm a native Floridian. I grew up in Fort Myers, Florida. I went to school in Tallahassee at Florida State. And I lived in the other coast for just a couple of years in Palm Beach, and then came to Tampa because I had friends from college who were here who I visited and loved it. I love the mix of Tampa. I love the diversity of our cultures. I love the grittiness of it.
Right.
I love that it's convenient to all the other places. And being a native Floridian, I can tell you, every town in Florida is completely different.
Sure.
It's different than Apopka and different than Apalachicola. Certainly different where I grew up in Fort Myers, and definitely different than Palm Beach. And I think that's why I like it so much, and that's why I stayed and chose to have my family here. Besides that, I kind of I'm the caretaker of my family. Their hobbies are my hobbies. My husband's a surfer and a mountain biker and a skateboarder, and my daughter skateboards with him, and she's a mountain biker now, and she plays flag football. And so I run around and take care of them. And I'm a member of my PTA, my daughter's school. I do all communications for the school. Before I got into this race and before I was married, I was big in my community. I've chaired every major gala in town.
Oh. So
Tampa General Hospital, I chaired their gala twice. St. Joe's, I chaired their gala twice. The American Cancer Society, I chaired their Cattle Barons Ball. In its 3rd year in existence, I chaired it. Tampa Museum of Art, I chaired their after hours event. All these things I did before I was 30.
Wow.
So I've always had a lot of energy, and I've always found the best place, and maybe that's my hobby, is I like to help people with that energy. So it's kind of what threw me into this race too. I said, well, gosh, I've got the flexibility. I've got the partnership in my husband. Someone needs to step up. Someone needs to replace our current representative. And that's, I felt, gosh, I should do it. And that's why I got into this race.
Yeah, that was the next thing I was going to ask you. So you had seen some of the ways that she had voted and felt that you weren't being represented and figured nobody else was going to do it. So you were the right woman for the job.
Yes. And the story was, when in my younger 20s, when I was all about town and single and had no children, people would always say, you should run for mayor. Debra knows everybody. She's everywhere, and I had no interest in that. But then I started to watch what our state legislatures were doing with funding of our schools. Even before I had a kid, I saw what they were doing. And I'm like, well, this is crazy. I'm a product of public schools. I'm a product of Head Start and free lunch. And I know that sometimes that was the only meal I got that day. And I know how important our schools play in our communities. And I've seen what our legislature is trying to do to privatize them. And firsthand, the Speaker of the House, former Richard Corcoran, and Jackie Toledo, a current rep, is a puppet of his. So I was just really getting frustrated. And I actually went to a couple of friends of mine that I knew were in the political scene and said, maybe can I go run for school board?
Right.
How can I help? What can I do? And they're, of course, like, well, Debra, you need to be great on the school board, but what you're upset about is funding, and that happens in Tallahassee.
Sure.
And so I took about a year and a half, did due diligence. I talked to everybody I knew who's ever ran. I talked to people in the party. I talked to people who ran for the seat and lost, people who've won in other seats, and took notes and said, okay, I did my due diligence. I said, okay, do I have what it takes? Am I ready to make the sacrifice? And how angry am I? And I went home and talked to my family, and we agreed, we want you to do this. We need to do this. And I got to tell you, my daughter and my husband are my biggest fans, and they're the ones who keep me going. But we decided someone's got to step up and take the seat back.
Sure.
And I think I'm energized when I canvass and I talk to people who are independents and Republicans and Democrats alike, and they are all concerned about the same thing as I am. So that confirmed my mission. I said, okay, this is right. This is the time. This is when I need to be doing this.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that you had wrestled with possibly running for school board, because one of the things that I've noticed is there is education at the forefront of your platform. And I've looked at your website, and I'd like to know, just based on your own thoughts, what are some other pillars or issues do you think are at the front of your platform? Obviously, education. Yeah. What else do you think are kind of the leading issues at the forefront of your platform?
Well, I also think, we haven't done enough for the small businesses in Florida. We tend to kowtow to the larger corporations. We do everything we can to get them here, right? Pay them incentives, right? And we do all these things. But then we forget about the small businesses, and I'll go to the environment as an example. Right now, we've lost $90 million in tourism dollars to all the small businesses along the coast.
For the red tide and all of the pollution.
So these are hotels, restaurants. People have lost jobs.
Right.
They've lost jobs because they have no one there. And to me, that tells me how they don't care as much about the people who live every single day and rely on those tourism dollars. They care about the big corporations who are coming in and building buildings for them and all that. And I want high paying jobs. I do. But I think we get there by having the best schools in the nation, right? By addressing our transportation challenges. Because here's a good story. GE was looking for a headquarters, and all these states want to pay them money. We'll give them incentives to move to. I think Florida was one of them. We'll pay them all kinds of credits, tax credits, to get them here. Well, they chose Boston. Boston didn't pay them a dime, and they chose them because their schools are A-rated, they're well funded, they've addressed their transportation challenges, and they're also very inclusive, and they're in culture and diversity. And I want us to be that way.
Right.
As someone who loves Florida, who's never left, I want us to be someplace where people want to come, not just because we don't have an income tax. And not just because of our beaches, which, by the way, are amazing, but because we are all those things too. Sure. That we pay our teachers well, and we understand the need for transportation and addressing that. But we also understand that we need to be inclusive and have diversity. And that also should be represented in our government at all levels. Sure. Like, I want our city council to look like our communities. I want our state government to look like our communities, and it's not. So I think that I went from small business to that, but that's kind of my drive.
Sure.
So education, doing more for our small businesses and basically all of Florida at that point, and addressing some of the needs we have in our environment as well.
So where do you think there's a disconnect? Because to me, it's very obvious that if we want to attract businesses, we need to build the infrastructure that you're talking about. But we don't. It's never been a focus, at least as long as Republican rule. So what do you think is the disconnect behind that when there are Republicans who are making this these decisions at the state legislation? How do you think they don't carry over or understand the need for, at the very basic, infrastructure in our state?
That's a really good question. And I know that, even my opponent will tout that she's got money for transportation projects. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'll get money for that. Oh, that's great. But is that actually solving our issues? Mm-hmm. Like, I think Dana Young, our current senator, and Jamie Grant, a House rep who's just north of my district, I think they got funds for autonomous vehicles, like a fleet of autonomous vehicles.
Yeah.
But putting more cars on the road isn't the answer. Mm-hmm. Widening our roads isn't the answer. There's lots of ways that we can address it. And I recently was endorsed by the Sierra Club, and I talked to them at length, and they were happy to hear that I was not for autonomous vehicles. I think they're cute and clever, and maybe they can deliver groceries, or they can be on college campuses and move things around, but they're not the answer to our problems. I do think at the end of the day, it goes back to the money. Mm-hmm. Some of these projects are delayed, or we're building for construction reasons, but we're not answering the issues with sprawl, right? We're not answering the issues with affordable housing. Mm-hmm. We're not answering the issues. We're just kind of doing things, and the bigger guys kind of get the chunk of the money. So I think maybe getting the money out of politics is one way we can address that.
I agree.
Yeah.
And we had kind of talked earlier, so I just want to clarify for our listeners, you have pledged to take no money from, corporations, big pharma, all of these industries, big sugar, that's driving, to push legislation in the short term for big projects and fattening their paychecks, but not really looking holistically at the future of our state.
Absolutely.
And then, so you touched a little bit, you said you've been endorsed by the Sierra Club. And one of the things that's impressed me, aside from knowing you personally, is the endorsements that you've picked up. Honestly, you seem to be the candidate who's picked up the most endorsements. And some of them are just so impressive as far as like progressive concerns. Tell me about all of your endorsements and who's endorsed you thus far.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of that too, and I'm working hard to get them all because first off, I believe in them. So that's why I want them.
Right.
To me, they're my sponsors.
Right.
I don't want I'll take the dollars that come with those. Don't get me wrong, but to me, I'm wearing those as badges of honor. Mm-hmm. I've been endorsed by Sierra Club I just mentioned, which is pretty impressive. It made my father very proud. We grew up. My father is really big into the environment and birding, and as growing up, it was a big deal. So that made him really proud. I just got a National Organization of Women endorsement, especially in these times when we're having to fight for people to believe women.
Right.
I was proud of that one. I got Ruth's list and Emily's list almost back and back. Mm-hmm. And that's great. I got my first endorsement I got, which I'm very proud about that. My very first endorsement I got was from Working Families Party.
Yeah, I love that.
And, they came down and met with me really early on in my campaign, and the rep talked to me for about an hour, and he laughed and he said, Debra, I got to tell you, I'm very impressed just by who you are, and that, here you are just jumping into this very, you're a Republican district and you're just going to run. So I was really honored. They said, we're going to endorse you, and we're going to send people down as you get closer. We're going to help you do some canvassing. So that was amazing.
And for listeners who don't know, that's a kind of a third party, the Working Families Party, that's really popular up north. Mm-hmm. It works with the Democrats a lot. A lot of people start running off as that to show their commitment to progressive values and working families. And then, as they get in larger races, they transition and help influence the Democratic Party.
Absolutely right. Yep.
I was surprised they endorsed someone where they don't have a local chapter as well. I didn't know they did that.
Yeah, it was great. It was really great. I don't know if I reached out to them. I don't know what I did, but somehow they connected, and I was just happy to get their endorsement. It was
awesome.
Really great. Yeah. Flippable endorsed only 135 candidates across the nation, and they picked mine.
Oh.
Which was fantastic. And they actually sent money.
Wow.
They sent money to I have a PAC, a PC, and then they sent money to my campaign, which I was thrilled by. And I think I only had I either filled out a survey or I talked to them on the phone. I don't know what it was. I'm very proud of the endorsements from the Florida Education Association, Hillsborough Classroom Teachers Association, and I just got last week the Florida Association of School Administrators.
Wow.
So I'm very, very proud of that, especially because I'm so concerned and passionate about education.
And lots of unions.
Lots
of unions.
Yeah.
And the Progressive Caucus.
Don't get me wrong. And that's great. And I'll tell you, as a first-time candidate, the endorsement screening process to me is incredible. It's almost like a podcast. You're here and you're answering questions, and it gets me fired up. And I always leave so energized from those screening processes. So, yeah.
Good, because I look at it and it stresses me out.
Yeah, I love it.
So I like that. That means you
it.
were born to be a candidate.
I love it.
So speaking of the Progressive Caucus endorsement, I pulled our endorsement form because I just wanted to allow the listeners to hear some of the answers that you have on some of the issues that we feel are important. So I wanted to kind of talk about some of the questions that we had asked you. Again, since your opponent is such a heavy NRA endorsed candidate, tell me a little bit about your stance on gun control and gun reform, or where you see that as far as if you got elected in the legislation. Or when you get elected.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm completely against NRA's power. I immediately took the no NRA money pledge that the kids asked for. I was devastated by Parkland, as every parent and anybody who with a heartbeat should have been. And in fact, the kids actually called me they had a March for Our Lives town hall, and they called and said, "Could you come?" I said, "Absolutely." And my opponent didn't show up, of course, so they put me up on stage, and I talked about, I support they had a beautiful 5-point plan and what they want to do. But I was pretty devastated when our legislature in front of the kids voted no to even talk about banning assault weapons. Yeah. It was optics. It was pure optics for the kids, and they said no, and my opponent did. And I just found that just wrong. I know they had a bill coming up, the whole Marjorie Stoneman that they were planning. I get that, but that's not what the kids asked for. And they didn't address what the kids asked for. The kids wanted to ban assault weapons, which I absolutely agree with. They wanted to ban high-capacity magazines, which I absolutely agree with. They wanted to ban bump stocks, which they got. They wanted to raise the minimum wage to buy, which we got. They didn't want to arm teachers.
Right.
Which they didn't listen to.
Right.
And they wanted some mental health funding, which they got, but I don't think it's being dispersed properly.
Right.
So I'm completely against NRA. I think they have too much power. And even though those Republicans voted for that bill and the NRA has come after them, I'm glad that they're getting some heat from the NRA because it's kind of funny. But all those who had A ratings now just have a C rating, which to me, C is still passing.
Sure.
I'll never be a fan of the NRA.
So we've already talked a little bit about public education, and obviously, we've talked about how that's at the front of your platform. But tell me exactly what that equates to, because as I speak with all of the guests that come on, because I'm a huge public education supporter, and so many people are unaware of how much we've been stripped of our funding, how much money has gone towards privatization, how, they're making it so that teachers don't even have to have college degrees to teach in some of these schools. So when you say you support public education, especially when you go to Tallahassee, what exactly does that look like? Do you feel that there's a place for charter schools in our system, or how do you feel about the privatization movement in general?
I don't think our public schools should be privatized. So I'll start there. Secondly, I think that the idea of charter schools, when they were first created, was a good idea. They were supposed to be innovative think tanks,
right?
Idea makers, a place where you can go and you can experiment, and then take that back into the regular schools and use those, theories,
right?
But then greed got involved, and we started to see all the people running to the state of Florida to open charter schools, the for-profit charter schools. I'm not against charter schools and they are outliers, like Pepin. Pepin does serve a need.
Right.
Now, I wish Pepin would offer transportation. That's a problem I have with these charter schools.
Right.
They say they feel that they have special needs or this, but they don't offer any. That's a problem. So I think our magnet schools are great.
Right.
I also think private schools are great. I think my husband went to a Catholic school. I think parochial schools, if you believe that if your faith is that so strong that you want to send it, fine.
Right.
But I don't believe state tax dollars should be going to private schools, especially faith-based private schools.
Right.
I believe in separation of church and state. Now, besides just the fact that we have charter schools, I think what we've done to our public schools is as a way of testing, as a way of assessing our teachers, is wrong. We never had the testing. I grew up in Florida. We never had the testing that we have now. My daughter, the last 2 months of her third grade year was just assessments on her teacher.
Wow.
Why are we doing that? I think that one test a year, like when I grew up, is fine to see if you can go to the next grade or not.
Sure.
And I think teachers have skills to know when their kids, they can do it on their own to see if their kids need some extra help.
Sure.
This VAM they use to assess the teachers for their pay incentives, I think that's wrong. I think. And then when you do the whole comparison, charter schools don't have the credentialing of the teachers that we require in public schools. They don't have the high stakes tests that we require in public schools. And they also they can turn people away.
Anybody they want.
For any reason. And so, for instance, my opponent just recently sent out a mailer to the homes talking about the Hope Scholarship. Mm-hmm. And the Hope Scholarship was part of the 7055 House bill that passed this past session, and it basically lets kids who claim they are bullied.
Oh, right.
And they can take, and all they have to do is make a complaint, and they have so many days for the schools to acknowledge it and do whatever. And if they're not satisfied, they're able to go to any private school they want with money.
That's right.
Now, here's the kicker. Private school doesn't have to accept them. So if the child is gay, for instance, faith-based schools aren't going to accept the gay child. Right. Now, he's probably being bullied because he's gay. So one, again, we're crossing the church-state line that I don't like.
Right.
But two, they don't have to accept the kid. So where's the kid go? And three, we're not addressing the bully.
Yeah.
So we're going to take every kid out of the school except for the bully? Mm-hmm. Oh, and by the way, once they take the money out for the school year and the kid doesn't go there, the money doesn't come back to the public school.
Why can't they just change public schools?
Right. Or why don't
they
we
have to fund them to go to a private school?
Or why don't we take the bully out? Why don't we take the bully out?
Or build some infrastructure, absolutely,
put some structure
on the inside.
So there's a lot of things. And I walk my daughter's campus all the time and at her school and talk to teachers and the principals and the vice principals. In fact, my daughter's principal is telling me they don't have enough ESE teachers and also ESOL. And that's funding. So we're losing our teachers in droves.
Absolutely.
In droves.
Because they can't afford to teach.
They can't afford to teach. And so, I'm with our gubernatorial candidate on our side of the ticket when he says we got to pay our teachers at least $50,000 a year to start.
Absolutely, at the very minimum, and then make sure that they have the support that they need. Because I think a lot of times candidates running focus on pay, and that's obvious important because teachers want to feel compensated and not have to drive Uber or do anything to take a second job. Sell blood or any of the things that my teacher friends have to do to pay their bills. But I also think that people don't understand the lack of just support in general that teachers get, whether it's having enough time to plan, whether it's having just routine of the same standards in place and the same thing. I mean, systematically, the destruction of teaching, the respect that you get, people think, oh, you get the summers off and you have a cake job. I don't think people understand how much time and energy it takes to be a teacher. So I think, just, and I love that about Gillum, that when he talks about putting, respect back into jobs, or he talks about jobs with dignity, he's not always just focused on how much money we should pay people, but also making sure that there's respect and dignity, for jobs that are considered, even though you need an education for it, and you need to pass state certifications, the way you get paid, more of a, a working class kind of a job.
I just saw, just to end on that one, I just saw a recent article where they polled parents, and I think it's devastating to hear that only 20 to 30% of the parents that they polled would want their kids to become teachers. And it used to be so much higher.
Sure.
You want your kid to be a teacher, or, and it's so low because in Florida, let me take that back, in Florida, because of the pay and the respect.
Right.
So, and I think that's really, really, really sad.
So last night we went to see the Michael Moore movie.
I haven't seen that yet.
And it was amazing. But it did really do a good job of kind of explaining the strikes that happened across with teachers, as well as in West Virginia, how the teachers how they, they did a strike and how they won and how that inspired strikes across the country. One of the problems with Florida is it's written to our Constitution that we can't strike. And personally, I think that it should be, as far as supporting education, something we focus on trying to change within our Constitution.
Absolutely.
And everybody says, oh, it's too hard, you can't do it. But I mean, we're looking at Amendment 4 that was going to be on the ballot regardless of whether we had the constitutional revision. So I think it is possible. So if we were able to organize behind behind that concept. Is that something that you would support?
Absolutely. And think about it. Florida's been attacking unions for a long time.
Right.
And that was something they did back then. I believe in the power to strike.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in unions.
Right.
And that's something I would totally support. If they want me to author it, I would author it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Good.
And so the other thing that I was looking at that's really heavy in our endorsement form for people who haven't had a chance to see it, obviously, and you talked about, is healthcare. Mm-hmm. It's a crisis within our state, within our country, and every candidate that I've had on, when they're talking to their constituents, is always talking about how healthcare is at the front of the concerns. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit as far as Medicare for all, especially with what Gillum's trying to do in this in the in-state race, what you feel as far as we should be doing in our healthcare system and what that should look like.
Well, first off, I believe that we should have taken that Medicaid expansion money. Mm-hmm. It was completely wrong and horrible of our governor not to take that money. Doing that alone, we would have increased a lot of well-being of women and children in our state. We are ranked 38th in the nation for women and children well-being. And that's mental health, that's wellness, and it's directly due to the fact they have no access to health care.
Right.
Number one. Number two, I am for Medicare for all because I'm a small business owner.
Mm-hmm.
My husband is. We pay for our own insurance. We make too much to get Medicaid. We make and too little to be afford our own insurance.
And you don't get those group rates.
We don't get a group rate. We're not in the ACA because we don't get any subsidies or any kind of breaks. And just for insurance for my husband and I and my daughter, we pay about. Just to have the insurance, it's about $17,000-$18,000 a year.
Wow.
Okay, then we have copays and deductibles. Yeah. So just to even use our insurance, it's probably $27,000 a year. Mm-hmm. Now, I actually am a cancer survivor, and my husband has a chronic illness. My husband has Crohn's disease. Mm-hmm. So for us, getting insurance before Obamacare was incredibly hard. Yeah. It was very expensive.
Small
and my husband was denied. And because I've had melanoma 3 times. Mm-hmm. You have to go 10 years before they'll let it go again. And I had it again in 9-year time. I'm like, but it's hard. And, and we have to make sure our daughter is covered. And, my daughter was denied at birth. My daughter was denied insurance. She was constipated. You have a child. Mm-hmm. What babies aren't constipated, right? And they denied her and had to go. So it was absolutely crazy. I actually have healthcare clients. Right. I represent some of the hospitals in town, and they're actually getting a short stick too. Sure. I mean, they are asked to take care of those without insurance in their hospital and cover the cost. Now they do get paid back by our state, so that's where my brain starts going like, well, what? If we're going to pay the state back anyway for the patients that come through their emergency room, why don't we just give it to the patients? Why are we having to, let's give them Medicaid. Let's cover them. Right. That's our Medicare for all. Let's cover them. Sure. So it's a pretty frustrating part for me. Same with medication, the cost of medication. Mm-hmm. My husband takes medication that's $4,000 a month. Wow. $4,000 a month.
Wow.
And my godson is a type 1 diabetic. Mm-hmm. And his mother's a teacher. And every year, she has to fight to get his medication covered when they change plans on her. Right. Right? And I'm like, and so do I.
My husband insurance is the worst.
And my husband, every time we change plans, because you have to change a plan because the costs go up. Mm-hmm. So we have to change your plan. Yeah. And every time it's a battle. And I know we're not alone.
Absolutely
not. Healthcare is a right.
Do you think that Medicare for all is on the horizon and something that's realistic, or do you think that it's way down the road?
I think it's on the horizon. I think it's realistic.
Yeah.
I think we have to get more people in office who understand, who, the problem we have is people who are making decisions have enough money and insurance. They don't blink.
Right.
And a lot of times until it happens to them, they don't even have they have one iota. They don't even think about it.
Sure.
I think more people in Tallahassee and in D.C. who actually have been through it.
Right.
My poor mother, I lost my mother to brain cancer, and she was on Medicare. And I'm in the hospital room getting ready to have surgery to remove the tumor, and she had a neuroglioblastoma, just like Ted Kennedy, just like McCain, just like Joe Biden's son. And I'm in the room with her. My dad's on the end. She's 67 years of age. Luckily, they diagnosed her. She just got into Medicare. But she's looking at my father with tears in her eyes and saying, how are we going to pay for this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not where we should be as a country.
Right.
You shouldn't be worrying about how you're going to pay for surgery that's possibly going to save your life. Mm-hmm. And then I hear cases of children who are being denied services for, cancers and heart disease or even just epilepsy.
Yeah.
And then, let's talk about medical marijuana. And let's talk about
talk about it.
Let's talk about some of these are some of the things that could be helping some of these patients and we're roadblocks up in Tallahassee.
Well, one, I'm sorry to hear about your mother. I know how painful that is.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to pivot on such a sad note.
No,
but
that's okay.
Since we're talking about medical
marijuana, let's go there.
How do you feel about legalizing recreational marijuana?
I actually think if our voters vote for it, I think we should do it. From what I see and understand from states that have done that, they've made a lot of money. And we need more sources of revenue in our state since we're probably never going to have an income tax.
Right.
That's not going to happen. So instead of increasing the taxes on people, it's a regressive tax in our state, the people who consume the most. I mean, if we open that up, that would so much money. So I'm for it. I think just like alcohol, just like cigarettes, we can regulate it.
Sure.
We can make it safe, but I don't see a point in fighting it, quite frankly.
Right.
And I know my husband, before medical marijuana was even allowed here, my husband has Crohn's disease. And if you don't know anything much about that,
I do.
It's horribly painful. It's
intestinal.
It's a painful disease. And the only thing that made him feel better was to smoke pot. And he did because it worked. And that's why cancer patients use it. So, I think that we've got to understand the importance of this herb, this plant that's been around a lot longer than us, and understand its purpose in life.
Right.
And it has helped a lot of people.
Yeah, Crohn's disease is awful. They can lose parts of your intestines.
My husband's had his colon completely removed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not to pivot again on your
that's all right.
tragic healthcare stories.
We're all good. We're all good.
But I want to talk a little bit about this upcoming ballot. So we have some amendments on there. Are there any amendments in general that you feel, especially connected to, or that you're a proponent or opponent of, as far as the constitutional amendments are concerned?
Well, I think felons' rights restoration to me is
Amendment 4.
Yeah, Amendment 4 is a big one. I think if none of them pass but that, I'd be happy. It's a long time due in the state. Right. And it's not just about voting. I know it's all about voting. To me, it's more than that. It's systemic. It's a cycle that happens. Just like poverty. If you don't give someone an opportunity to come back into their community and become a citizen again, it's job opportunities. It's joining an organization. And it's their children and grandchildren who see them participating. And so to me, that's really important. And I think that you serve your time, you should be able to get right back into it. So that's a big one for me.
Yeah, and most of the other states already have that.
Exactly
so it's not
right.
It's not something that we would be the trailblazers.
It's not radical. It's not a radical idea.
What about because we had a discussion in our last meeting about the tax referendums, and I know it's hard. Especially as a candidate, to be pro-taxation, because it's so many people are just looking for that on who they're going to vote for, because taxes are such a scary word for them, and they don't necessarily understand how taxes are used or where deficits are or how it can improve their lives directly. So we have 2 referendums on the ballot. We have, I believe it's a full cent for transportation and a half cent for education. Yep. Are you supporting both of those amendments? And if so, tell me a little bit about that.
I am supporting them both. They are both widely popular in my district by both sides of the aisle. And I'll tell you the reason why we have them. Unfortunately, the only reason why we have them is because my opponent and her party, their inability to do what's right. And their inaction, right? Because they didn't fund our schools properly. They didn't fully fund an equitable, free public school system, which is part of their job and it's per the Constitution. We have gone to the community, the county, to help fill the gap. Right. Transportation too. Again, they're funding things that aren't really going to address the problem. And we have sprawl on who's doing that. So I would support both. I don't think of them as a tax. I think of them both as an investment. Right. Because both of these things are needed. Both of these things are economic drivers that actually will help us in the state of Florida economically. And I just heard from Jeff Eakins, the superintendent. I was at a couple of forums this week where he spoke, and he's very transparent on how the dollars are being used. And we've got good oversight We've got Betty Castor, who is our last commissioner of education in the state of Florida, and someone who's endorsed me. Full disclosure, she's going to be the person and not getting paid to oversee where the dollars go. He's only asked for 10 years, which will get $131 million, I believe, to us, to the schools.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand that they're capped at a certain amount of time.
A certain amount, and it's not taxing your medical supplies, and it's not taxing your groceries. It's really sales tax and tourists,
right?
Who, of course, now right now we have red tide, so our tourist numbers are down, so we have to fix that. But it's really going to come from people outside of your normal everyday spending. But if you look at it, the average family would only spend $63 a year. That's it. So I'm willing to give $60. I'm willing to give $300 a year. I'm willing to give whatever I can.
Right.
But so it's not as big as people think.
Sure.
And transportation the same. I really don't know what that one breaks down because I'm not really dived into that amount per family yet. But
I think from what I saw, and I could be totally wrong, it was like somewhere in the $1,200 range. But again, I could be totally wrong about that.
Yeah, I don't know that either. I know the school one, it's like 17 cents a day. So it's less than a pencil eraser.
Right.
So I'm for them both. And I think that I don't call them taxes, I call them investments. And again, if the state legislature would have I don't know, I'll talk about the millage rates. And the millage rates is what the state uses to let local governments give money to the schools. So they approve them. And when the recession hit, the millage rate comes from your property tax. They reduced it during the recession.
That's right. But then they never brought it back up.
And they never brought it back up.
Right.
So they should bring it back up. The economy has rebounded.
Right.
And again, when you look at the amount, it's not a lot. I think it's $300 a year, again, per family. But that drives lots and lots of revenue for our schools.
Right.
And we're booming. We are, I think it's 5,000 people a day are moving into our county. And we are the 8th, and I know you know this, Jessica, but we're the 8th largest school district in the nation.
Yeah.
And unlike Pinellas, who, by the way, has a half-cent referendum on there, and they also got an additional millage, they're not growing because there's no growth. In fact, their numbers are declining. But all around us, every other county has passed these referendums.
Right.
So
they have everywhere.
Yeah, we're due. We're due. And but I don't like when people try to make them oppose like this or that.
Yeah.
I think that's unfair to both of them.
Sure.
I think they're both both needed, and I think that we should support them both.
Yeah, our caucus is recommending that everybody vote yes on both of them down the ballot. So, all right. So we're getting close to the end, but one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk about, and I mentioned that when you got here, get your feedback on, because I love to talk about candidates, but I also want to always keep in focus, especially as candidates running as Democrats, what's happening with the Democratic Party. And you're one of the candidates who I've seen take an interest, in our local party, come to maybe more of the less public meetings and try to understand, how our structure is and how we're supporting our candidates. And I know that you've gotten some positive and some negative feedback for that. And I just wanted to kind of get your feedback as a candidate who's kind of new to this process and just, I'm assuming, getting more involved in the Democratic Party and seeing the moving pieces and what we're trying to do. What's kind of your feedback or what you've seen so far that's working in our county party? Let's narrow it down to that, because it is, there's the national party and the state party, but in our county party, kind of what's your feedback so far on what you've seen, the direction of our county party?
Well, first off, I got to tell you, I love the amount of people that I'm seeing at these meetings. We know that's been driven since 2016 election. We know that, and that we saw an immediate expansion of membership. I'd never joined the Democratic Party. Locally, statewide, I've been a Democrat.
Sure.
But in the past, when I went to events, quite frankly, there were a lot of aged people,
right.
White hair. And as a young person, I'm like, okay, I have nothing in common with them.
Right.
And, there weren't really a lot of activists that I met. So I will say that what I love most about is the amount of people that I met, like yourself, Jessica, I will tell you. I love the activism. I love the passion. I love seeing the wide range of ages and colors of skin and diversity in where we're from and diversity of income levels. To me, that made me want to come and find out and be a part of it and say, okay, this is something I can get my hands around. I really didn't understand the structure of how, of course, the running joke is Democrats never had any money. So I didn't understand, we don't have any money to give to people. So
Sure.
I never cared about if they gave me money or not. But
Right.
I wanted to see how they went about doing that. Especially this time around when we had so many people running for office who were Black women, or a Spanish man,
Right.
or an Indian woman. And I kind of wanted to see, okay, well, how are we doing this? I want to kind of dive into it. And then also we have, in Tampa, we know this. We have factions. We have this group who's been around forever and they kind of control this. And then we have this group and they've been around forever. And guys, tell me, as a first-time candidate, and I'm pretty transparent, as you know, you can't see on this podcast, but my face, I don't play poker for a reason. But I've been told as a candidate, I can't even like someone who's running for office because... Wow. Oh, no, you can't because and sure enough, I liked something one day and I had 5 people text my campaign person and say, tell Debra she can't do that.
Wow.
I'm like, what do you mean I can't do that? I can do whatever I want. So that part's hard for me.
So you feel like sometimes based on establishment or some of the, I say old guard ways that there's almost somewhat of a bullying mentality within the party for new candidates, trying to give them a direction of which way they should or should not go?
Yeah, I think that. And I think that, and maybe I can't be bullied. I think that's I'm one of 5 children. I have 3 older brothers. I'm a redhead. I mean, what else can I tell you that I've probably taken it all my entire life?
Right.
And so for me, it doesn't, when you ask me not to do something because you say you're an establishment and this is what you think, this is how it should go, that drives me so far away.
Sure.
And I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
So what I like to see is people say, well, no, just because you say that's how we always did it doesn't mean that's how we need to be doing it. And I know that, and I'm in marketing, and I know that the only way you can actually get more people to join your group is to be more inclusive, to be more accepting. And it's not always the person, and this is a big deal for me, with the most money that wins.
Right.
And we've seen that with Gillum, right? I was so happy that he won the primary because he was told he had none of any money. He cannot win across the state, right? And sure enough, he won the primary. And I've been told that. I basically, well, she can't raise any money.
Right.
You know what? I'm working still. I'm a mom. I have a life.
Sure.
I'm working really hard. And I'm going to win this seat. I'm going to win this seat with less money than my opponent. And I want to do that on purpose. Like, I'm taking money. Don't get me wrong. People give me money if you want to give it to me. But I hope that I win with a 16th of what my opponent has in her checking account on purpose, because I want someone behind me that's coming, because someone's going to run behind me.
Right.
And I want to give them a manual and say, don't listen to all these people.
Right.
If you're passionate and you're willing to step up and you're in the right line with how I'm thinking and what our state needs, don't listen to them.
Right.
Run your race. Do it this way. And speaking of build a bench, we haven't done a good job at that. And I think now, because we're opening our doors, we can get more people in and get them ready to run.
So
we're not done. We haven't done a jump at that.
Do you think the direction of the party, then, from what I'm hearing you say, especially our county party, should be to be more inclusive, to stop necessarily equating success with fundraising or financial ability, that we should start running candidates that represent the communities that they're running in, whether that means based on diversity or socioeconomic situation, that we should support those candidates, and that would help make our party more successful and stronger?
Yes. All day long. Yes.
What do you think about the headquarters that opened up? That was a fight for us. A lot of people don't know that there were a lot of people within the party who didn't want us to open that.
Yeah. You know what? I think, well, for me, it's a drive because I'm way in South Tampa. But I love how they went about picking the location. I love that they had a map.
Yeah.
And they took a pin in it and they did a 20-minute drive and they just did I thought that was the fairest, smartest way to do it.
Do you think it's been helpful? Like getting lit there and having a place where people can come and get your stuff?
Now, I don't get up there very often because, quite frankly, I live so far away and the traffic. But I did go up to the opening, which was fantastic. I love it. I think that I think anywhere that we can all come as a group
Right.
and even just stop in or have meetings, I think it's wonderful. And especially during election season. It's great training space. I mean, I think it's great.
So you have your own office in South Tampa. So now we're going to hit the part where we're kind of wrapping up and you get to tell us all the ways that our listeners can support you and about what you're doing. So what's the address of your office? When is it open? Tell me about it.
Yeah. So first off, my office was donated. It's in kind.
Wow.
It is a
nice donation.
It's my good friend who she rents space there. So she's given me space. It's a beautiful building. It's a green building, LEED approved. I will have my election night victory party there.
Oh, okay.
And it's a wonderful space, but it's got lots of conference room meeting areas. It's on the corner of Fremont and Kennedy in South Tampa. It's 1810 West Kennedy Boulevard.
Okay.
Parking is in the rear and the entrance is in the rear. So if you ever come by, just make sure you park in the back. Lots of parking. Lots of parking. It's a big deal in South Tampa. We have interns. We have 3 interns from University of Tampa and 1 intern from University of South Florida. We're so excited to have them. So our office hours, I'm there when I'm not working, I'm there. But our office hours are Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. Wednesday and Friday, it's 10 to 2, and on Saturday, it's 10 to 1.
Okay.
And people stop in to get signs. They come into phone bank, and people are coming in and out to phone bank for half hour, whatever time they have.
Right.
And my consultant, Lee Hunt, is usually always there to direct people.
Awesome. So. Now, are you looking for more volunteers?
Always. I need some canvassers, especially during early voting. I need people to help me hold signs at the precincts.
Oh.
I need people to phone bank still. And you can do this from home. We're happy to send you a list. You can do it from the comfort of your couch. I need canvassers. We're doing pretty good. We're having some themed canvases coming up. The 6th canvas, October 6th, will be environmental focused. And then on the 20th, we're having a woman focus.
I like
woman focus.
Theme focused canvassing.
Because we're going to go out and just talk about that. And always we can, contributions are great. $25, $5, whatever you have.
What's the best way for people to contribute?
They can go online at Vote Bellanti. That's B as in boy, ELLANTI.com. There's a contribution button, and it goes right to my secure site to make a donation.
Great. Well, again, I appreciate it so much. I think after this, we're going to wrap up and use my son to help shoot it. So you're shooting a commercial?
It's a Facebook video.
So an online video, so people can see that online and share that as soon as you release it.
Yes.
You release it on your Facebook page?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then people can share that. Is there any other way people can share information about you?
Yes, we are on Facebook. We are on Instagram. We're also on Twitter. We've got a good social media game. In fact, I've been told by other people across the state, they send their candidates to my site to see how to do it.
Awesome.
So, and my interns also have come up with some really great ideas that we're going to be releasing some memes recently that they just were incredible.
Some memes.
We got some memes going on.
It's the meme level.
Today we actually referenced The Princess Bride. I don't know any other candidates who referenced
I love
the movie
The Princess Bride. My son just saw that.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much again for coming on. If our listeners, like I said, don't know, the Progressive Caucus has endorsed you. You're on our slate cards. I don't personally endorse a lot of candidates myself, but I absolutely endorse Debra Bellanti. Yay. So if you're listening, please go to her website, give her some money. If you can work in South Tampa and do some canvassing, if you want to do some phone banking at home. Recently, I've been really trying to emphasize local elections. We watch what's happening on the national news, and I know many of us feel triggered and helpless by what's going on in our country. And the only way that we're going to be able to affect that is not through the national level, but by supporting our candidates locally and building a bench from the ground up, and starting with school board and starting with county commission and then on to city council, and absolutely our state legislation, and making sure that we have people who are fighting for us at that level. So thank you for running. I hope everybody supports you. Yay. Thanks again for coming.
Thank you.
And for all of our listeners, thank you for listening, and have a nice day.